Ladies and gentlemen, it was 1977. Imagine if you can. I was a fresh-faced 19-year-old back then, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, in my final year of high school. I dropped out and then returned. ABBA was dominating the radio airwaves, including the airwaves of 4SR, the high school radio station which I had set up, and which would, within months, garner me a place in the industry which has now been my life for 40-plus years. It was a pivotal time in my life, not least because young Shirley McCormack, my girlfriend at the time, had agreed to marry me, although at that point we hadn't set a specific date. So that was 1977, the year that changed everything. But then again, maybe it was 1979 where everything changed. I'd been working in regional radio stations, kept apart from Shirley, who remained in Brisbane, except for the occasional stolen weekend where we could be together. And it was on one of those stolen weekends in 1979 that, well, without going into too many details, let's just say that we shared a special kind of hug. Now, it wasn't the first such hug sharing, but this one had repercussions. Repercussions which included giving us a specific date for that wedding. So maybe it was 1979 where everything changed. Or maybe it was 1980. Where everything changed, because that was when our eldest was born, Alan. And the moment when a man becomes a father, that really is life-changing. But maybe it was 1981. That's when my daughter Lyndall was placed in my arms, and I became more than just a husband and a father. I became a protector. Was that when everything changed? After all, that was the same year that I went from being a DJ playing stacks of wax from the Tower of Power to becoming a journalist shining a light into the dark corners of society. Or maybe it was 1990 when everything changed, when I was made unemployed by my radio station closing and changing format, which forced me to set up my own public speaking training consultancy. That certainly was a year where everything changed. I guess any of those years could be considered the year that it all changed. But do you want to know a secret? In any one of those years, it could all have changed in a completely different way. In every one of those years, I rushed ahead straight toward a cliff that could have seen my plans go plummeting away toward the rocks of uncertainty down below. But in each case, I was able to hold on, or change course, or survive that cliff fall. Let me explain. In 1977, as I said, I was at school running 4SR student radio, and ABBA dominated the charts. Now, I mentioned those two things specifically because the role they played could have turned out so very differently in my life. I was a difficult student at high school. For example, I only ever wore my complete school uniform 6 times in the final 3 years of school. How do I know that it was exactly 6 times? Because twice a year the school would allow students uniform-free days. And it was on those days, they were the only times where I would wear the entire uniform without addition or accessory. I was heavily involved in the student council, but rather than being a conduit for the school administration, which was of course what they hoped it would be, I was the gadfly, encouraging non-conformity in other students and always creating waves for the principal and his leadership team. In 1977, I won the School Service Award, and there is no doubt that I deserved it. Now, I'm not being arrogant here, I'm just being honest. My leadership role in a variety of school activities meant that I deserved that award. But as I say, I was also disruptive. So disruptive that a number of teachers apparently threatened to boycott the award ceremony if I was given that honour. And an equal number threatened to boycott it if I didn't. Well, in the end, I won the award, but for the only time in the school's history, it was shared with another student who I might say was, well, somewhat less problematic. I mentioned all of that just to give you background to this. I was also an ABBA tragic. In fact, I still am. I headed the ABBA Bring Them to Brisbane Association, ABB, never mind. We didn't bring them to Brisbane, so instead I drove 700 kilometres down to Sydney to see them perform when they came to Australia. And that was against the specific instructions of the school principal, who had threatened, well, unspecified punishment if I took 3 days off school for a non-educational purpose. I would have thought going to see ABBA was educational. He didn't agree. Well, looking back, I could so easily have been suspended or even expelled because of that, and that really would have changed everything. My radio career might well have been derailed, which would have pushed me into a non-radio job somewhere in Brisbane rather than out in the country, and that might have sped up or slowed down or completely changed the trajectory of my family life. And at each pivotal moment in my life, the same holds true. If I'd chosen not to accept a job in Adelaide and to remain in Brisbane, then who knows how things might have changed. When I was made redundant in Adelaide by a radio station, if I'd saved the payout that they gave me to fund my business rather than flying my children to see their grandparents for the first time in many years, then perhaps that business might have lasted longer than the year that it did. The point that I make is that every crossroads, every cliff face in my life, things could have gone very differently. Now, some of those changes may have been better, some may have been worse, and we'll never know which is which. But you know something? I really don't care. Well, actually, that's not true. I do care, but it's true to say that I have no regrets. At every cliff, I've been able to survive the fall, or I've held on in a typical cliffhanger fashion. I am, as we all are, the sum total of my experiences. Now, some of those experiences have been better than others, but all of those experiences go to make up me, and they make you, you. So I've got a plea to make if I can. Every year could be the year that changes everything. In fact, every day could be the day that changes everything. Hell, every moment could be. You get the point that I'm making. We are in the final analysis at a crossroads or a cliff face every time we take a breath. So breathe deeply, ladies and gentlemen, grab hold and enjoy the ride. Because change is inevitable, but you never know. Each choice we make could be the change that changes everything. Madam Toastmaster.